Going
try
live, going
and keep half an
live.
eyeball out on the. I've got the chat up, so.
Okay, it says we are live. Hello, everyone.
Oh, great. Okay. I'm like, I'll believe it when I see it because it's not live yet. Oh, there it is. Good afternoon. Welcome to a Grays of Westminster live stream with a difference. We are, as you can see, remote today. Con is convalescing. You look all right, though, to be honest. You don't look as
I'm
bad as you
fine.
sound.
I'm getting better. I think. By Monday, I'm going to be ready to get back into action.
Excellent. So if you were wondering why we didn't have a Nikon report out this week, it really was because of him. It was all his fault.
That's me.
It was because of that, but also it's sometimes we need to take a little break from these things unscheduled. But here we are now. Hopefully you can hear us fine. I'm wearing headphones so that you don't get all the sounds from Zoom and everything else, but let us know if the sound is working okay for you.
Definitely mic check, mic check. 1 2 1 2. Definitely do let us know in the chat.
It's very difficult to do an audio test when you're in completely different places. So yes. I have no idea what we sound like.
With a few seconds delay as well.
Yeah, exactly. We'll try not to talk over each other any more than we usually do when we're in a live environment.
Exactly. So basically, it's going to happen a lot.
Yeah, definitely. So we're talking DSLRs today just because we thought, well, actually in the last week or so, although Con hasn't been here, we've had an awful lot of people telling us how they're still using DSLRs. And I think that that's really rather wonderful and something that should be spoken about more often. Someone was saying that they're a DSLR Luddite. I don't think there's anything, I can't think of the correct part of grammar, but Luddite-ish about using a DSLR. Yeah, the lip sync will be slightly out because we're each streaming on different things, and then it's going through Zoom, and then it has to go back out through YouTube. So it's going to have a slight delay. I think that's inevitable.
So exactly. So basically, the quality that you used to already, because we've been lowering the bar for years.
For the last couple of years, I think we're doing okay. Now, Harvinder put a really interesting comment there that I would like to address. But before I do, I wanted to let you know the Coffee Fund is open. Thank you very much to Fred, who's already contributed to the Coffee Fund.
Thank you, Fred.
I also wanted to do a little shout out. We had some visitors. Hal and Deborah Wimmers came to see us from Miami. It was actually not last week. I think it was the week before, but we didn't get to fit it into the live stream. So I'm mentioning it now. We love it when you come and visit us. So thank you for anyone who has. I think a few of you have been in the shop recently and I've either not caught your names or I've missed you. But anyway, please, if you do come in, say hi.
True. We had, I think, Jed from New York as well came in another week. And he tried some Voigtlander lender, so...
Yeah. Yes, that's right. He did. And we had Per from Sweden come over. So thank you very much for you who've managed to make the pilgrimage into Grays. Seth is in the house. Seth, it is Friday already, believe it or not.
Hello, Seth.
Shocking.
And we are here as usual.
We are. You can always rely on us.
Under any weather.
Brilliant. And Hal says, love the used lenses that they bought. So that's great. I'm glad Hal picked up, I think, a 50 millimeter nifty 50. So I'm very, very glad to hear it. Roy said it's Saturday in Australia. So just already time zone. Thank you to Adrian for your contribution to the Coffee Fund as well.
Thank you. But yeah, Roy lives in the future. That's what it is, I think.
He's living well ahead of us. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention before we dive into the comments is that this beautiful thing, look, I've got it in full stereo. We've got the poster and it's actually arriving on people's doorsteps now. So if you're a Nikon owner subscriber, then you will have your copy. If you haven't gotten it already, it will be arriving very soon. There were 1 or 2 people that had some issues with the printing. If you did have an issue with the printing, like for example, that's obviously not under our control, but we will send you another copy. So please drop an email to the lovely ladies in Nikon owner and they'll get you sorted. And if you haven't subscribed, why on earth not? Please do. And if you include the word stream in your subscription, then you get an extra little goodie from me when the time is right.
Yeah. Did you mention that the cover of that Nikon owner is shot by Truly Yours Becky?
That's right. That's right. That was, in fact, some of you will have seen that shot in one of our videos from the Big Cat Sanctuary. And the whole article in there is on the Big Cat Sanctuary and the lenses that we use to take that. That was, I think, with the 120 to 300 lens, or the 180 to 400.
Could be.
I can't remember which one.
We had both on the day, I believe.
Yes, we did.
And Richie was there as well.
And we had Rishi as well. Lucky us. Thank you to Jean for your contribution to the coffee fund, and to Keith, who said it's now getting cool enough for hot coffee and whatnot. It is very, very much pumpkin spice season.
It's time, isn't it? Halloween is coming up. We also need to thank Adrian. I don't think we did.
I did.
Thank you very much. Oh, you did? Okay.
But you couldn't thank him twice. That's totally fine. We really
thank you, Adrian.
it.
3 times even.
And Nige said, I missed a trick there. I should have held up my new book by mistake. Oops. I didn't bring a copy with me today, but yes, publication day was yesterday. So there are some people who have sent me lovely messages and said that my book arrived on their Kindles or on their Audible, or the paperback arrived through the post. Thank you, everyone who has said congratulations. This is a lifelong dream. So I'm very, very happy. And if you like historical fiction, sort of gothic mystery, then please feel free to buy a copy. It would make this little author very, very happy.
I heard there's some spiciness in there as well. And I heard there's a movie deal in the works.
Well, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Anyway, Dave says, I'd love to be out shooting. Alas, I have to sit here in my study working, but at least you have us to keep you company, Dave. That's what it's all about. Seth is a big fan of, as they call it over there, fall weather. We love autumn weather, sweater weather, and also Halloween every day. I mean, if you're working with special effects makeup, then I suppose Halloween is every day, really, isn't it?
Or do you think living in New York, it's like Halloween every day?
Maybe that's it. Now, there we go. No nookie in the book so far. Nigel said there's no nookie in the book so far. It's going to be disappointed. You've missold my book, Con. Oh, dear.
You know, I'm still waiting for my cut, you see, so I'm working hard for it.
Yeah, you are. Harvinder said, is that a Tom Ford t-shirt or the ill fit? I was wearing that exact, not yours, but I was wearing my version of that t-shirt yesterday.
No, mine is larger, yeah.
But it's a great t-shirt, actually. I bumped into some of our old friends from the shop. Do you remember Headley? Bumped into him yesterday. And he said, oh, Ilford t-shirt. So yeah, it's nice we should get Gray's t-shirts and just have like Gray's written across them.
Definitely. I think Ilford t-shirt fits really nicely this topic of the week, which is digital SLRs.
Yeah, very random. It's very true. All right. So I wanted to read out Harvinder's comment, if I can find it, where he talks about the August SEPA numbers, which is something that we would have talked about in the Nikon report had we done one.
We might do next Monday. I mean, it's your favorite topic after all.
I love it. Really. Harvinder says the August SEPA numbers show more DSLRs are shipped in Europe than any other region. Any thoughts why? China, 18.7%, Asia, not including China or Japan, 13.1%, Japan, 4.7%, Europe, 32.7%, Americas, 29%. So Europe's beaten the Americas by a good chunky 3.5% there on the DSLR shipments. Do you have any speculations as to why? I know that you often have speculations on things.
I have opinion on everything. But we talked about it. Remember, I think about maybe not 3 months ago, but about 6 months ago, we discussed that specifically. Yeah, it seems like DSLRs, we have a big stronghold of DSLR users here in Europe. And obviously different regions of the world have different preferences. Generally, let's say Japan and Asia goes for smaller cameras. That's why, let's say, Nikon One system did really well back then. DSLRs are strong in Europe, and it seems like all the latest and greatest is really kind of, is a trend in the United States. But then obviously if you get Asia is a big market. They are currently the biggest buyer of all the equipment just combined, because if you just include China and everything nowadays, it seems like it's a massive market for Nikon.
Yeah, so I think that us over here in Europe do maybe there's a sort of smaller turnover of how quickly we adopt new technology as well. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. It's difficult to say why, but when mirrorless is obviously the thing that most brands are pushing. And in fact, on my recommended reading on, I think it was on Google, it recommends articles to me. It brought up that old article from a few months back about how Nikon were phasing out DSLRs, or that they weren't going to be making any more again. And I was like, this is an old article. Why is it showing it to me again? Because nobody has anything to write about, obviously. But this is no news. But also, I wonder if us not adopting the new technology so quickly and preferring the older technology it's often been the case, certainly in the UK. I don't know if it's been that case all across Europe.
That's true. I mean, I've got a couple of thoughts while you were talking as well. So obviously, this expression like old Europe. So I guess, we like old things in here. But also, if you look at just general income across the Europe is much lower generally than the United States. So I guess, so let's say, like if you look, let's say what we're looking at about €1,000 a month, that's a kind of general salary. It goes high, maybe up to €2,000. Obviously, in the United States, it's much higher just in terms of regular numbers. So I guess in terms of people update cycles, it's generally, let's say, not as frequent as in the United States. So people tend to use the equipment maybe instead of upgrading every 2-3 years, maybe they're upgrading every 5 years. In general, just not, obviously, there's always someone who is upgrading almost to the latest spec pretty much with every release. But if you look at the majority of people, we're probably looking at something like 3 to 5 years update cycle.
Yeah. And as Seth points out, DSLR is 40 plus years old in terms of that design of camera, and millions of users have them, so they don't just disappear because mirrorless cameras came out, which is very, very true. When you look at it from the historical side of things, you remember when we talked about, for example, the D1 coming out and how photographers weren't convinced that the D1 would be a professional, like they weren't convinced about digital as a professional medium. The same thing happened when they translated from plates to paper, where it was like, oh, you're going to print your photographs on paper. Why would anyone want to buy or spend money on getting a picture taken on paper? And there were other reasons for that too. But there's always this kind of slowness in taking up something new. And DSLRs are very, very well established. 20 something years it is, isn't it? When did the D1 come out? 1999?
Something like this, yeah. I mean, I'll take your point even further. Remember, before Z9, I was telling that I don't feel like that system is ready for the prime time for professional photography.
That was a while back that you were saying that.
It was a while back, but before Z9 came out, and obviously we had great arguments with our viewers saying, no, Z6 and Z7 are great cameras, etc. And they are great, but there's a reason why, let's say, pros would kind of choose a trusted horse and just stick to something until the new technology comes out. So, and finally, Z9 is a big step forward in terms of what's focus speed, etc., etc. And obviously, we are waiting for the new releases that will take that technology and bring it down to cheaper cameras. And I think that may finally convince people to switch from their DSLRs. And, I mean, if you're looking at something like D850, it's still probably the best DSLR around among all manufacturers. And then for someone who needs a low light, there's always D6 as well. And it beats Z9 in terms of low light performance as well.
Yeah, it's very true. As Roy said, I only went to the Z9 because of the glass, because the glass is so good. The Z lenses are a big argument for actually going to the mirrorless system. But as you say, at the moment, they've kind of, apart from the Z30, which is now finally opening up to entry level, it's all been sort of middle of the road. And then the professionals and the entry level cameras have been ignored, except for the Z9. That's where the argument that we should have the Z30 be like the lowest entry point, preferably a tiny bit cheaper, and something else in the truly professional lineup, like the Z8 that you keep talking about, to convince people to move, basically.
Didn't say anything now. I was carefully choosing my words. But if you see the camera that I'm holding in my hands right now is actually a D500. And again, if you look at the Nikon Z lineup at this moment, there is no direct replacement of this camera. And I know that there's a really quite a good niche of people who really swear by these cameras. So pros who need the wildlife performance, and obviously its focus speed is fantastic on that. So maybe, yeah, there's no answer from Nikon in this particular lineup. So they're still waiting for this to come.
Yeah. Louise says, don't forget DSLRs are more affordable to people in countries like Portugal and Spain. It is a shame that DSLRs aren't being sort of further developed, I would say, for countries also, not Europe specifically, but countries like India, where their most popular cameras are the entry-level bodies. In fact, I think if I remember correctly, India was still selling D50-300s long after Europe had stopped, because it was the camera that sold the most out there. So
you know what they had as well? They had H200 2.8 D AF version, the N, the new one, till very recently, till about a couple of years ago, it was still in production, well, in supply there. It was not available anywhere else in the world, brand new.
Yeah. So it's interesting. There's different markets have different responses. Baxter said, my D810 and D800 bodies are good enough given my use case, so full frame mirrorless may not be a sensible upgrade. Now, David points out that there's a film craze over in the US, especially with younger people, which is good. And I think you can, there you go, you got some, just in case. What else is on that shelf, Con? Nice. Just showing off all your goodies. Exciting. Speaking of DSLRs and F mount, have you been, you've got, which Voigtlander are you testing at the moment? The 58?
The 58, yeah. So really enjoying it. It's an interesting one. Don't really like the focal distance that much. It just feels a little bit too tight.
Yeah.
But the rendering is amazing. It flares heavily, which again, you might like or not, but overall, the rendering is so beautiful. I've finally scheduled like whole months of Instagram posts, so brace yourself. So I was out of action for 3 months. So while I was at home, had a laptop on me. So, I've done that. So there will be a lot of samples of that lens, of 40mm, 28, and as well as 90 F-mount version. All lenses are superb.
Yes, lovely. So I've got the 90 at the moment, which is actually sitting on my FM3A, but that I'm going to swap with you at some point so that we can...
Hopefully on Monday,
so that we can, after I've disinfected the 58 you've got thoroughly.
Well, it was wearing a mask all that time while I was using it.
Good. I'm
so
glad it was.
The pictures came out all white, just white and blue.
Keeping very safe. Jelte van Gies asks a good question, says, good afternoon. I dropped my D7200. That's a shame. Switch to D750. What fast lens would you recommend for lower end of the millimeter spectrum? Manual focus primes could be okay. AF zoom feels like expensive premium. So I suppose it does depend a little bit on, first of all, when you say lower end of the spectrum, are you talking sort of mid-range, like 24 to 85, 24-70? Or are you looking for even wider, like 20 to 35, 17 to 35, 16 to 35, etc.?
Tell us your budget as well.
Yeah, and what's the kind of top end that you're looking to spend? Because then we can definitely recommend something for you. Baxter points out the other advantage for him is that he carry a couple of D810 bodies and throw an F5 or an F90X in my bag with just the one set of glass. I was going to say that's a lot of cameras to carry around in one go, but it's a good point. The beauty of being able to sort of seamlessly transition your lenses over. Obviously, if you're going or considering Z, then you've got to remember that not all your lenses are going to autofocus unless you've just got AFS glass, in which case that's fantastic. It will all be fine. But yeah, if you've got older glass, then for sure there's a sort of compatibility benefit for sticking with a DSLR.
True. I mean, when you mentioned price points as well, one of the things is there's a huge secondhand market for DSLRs, and the prices have dropped because obviously we have people upgrading to mirrorless systems. So there's a lot more Nikon DSLRs on the market at the moment available. So yeah, you don't need to go brand new. You can buy a nice secondhand one as well. Yeah,
that's right. And as someone else was pointing out, with so many people upgrading, there are so many lenses now available. Even if you do want to go mirrorless in the not too distant future and you're looking at buying AFS lenses, or even if you want to upgrade your older lenses to more modern lenses, there is a really big secondhand market now. So it's definitely worth looking at that to save some pennies. In fact, we have 10% off secondhand up to £200. So the discount is a maximum of £200, which means basically you get £200 off if you spend 2,000, but 10% off everything in our secondhand department until the 27th of October. So if you are looking for that, then have a gander at our website. We've got some goodies on there.
Well, I'm thinking £2,000 can get you actually a good setup in terms of camera and lens. Yeah. So the choices are there. Exactly.
J-Rod asks, how do I find the magazine? It's www.nikonownermagazine.com. I can put it in the description afterwards. I won't be able to do it while we're live because that would be difficult for me to multitask. But as Rob points out, please do give a like to the stream. It really helps the stream. It keeps it nice and healthy if you've given it a like. We hugely appreciate it. There's 185 people watching, only 74 likes, so it would be wonderful to have you just click that like button. Now, Kyle said, do they ship the magazine to the USA? Yes, is the answer. You can buy an electronic subscription if you don't want printed mags, or you can buy the physical subscription. The physical subscription is actually sent all over the world. So by all means, if you like the feel of real glossy paper, then you can go for the printed version.
Yeah. And I just want to come back to the likes a little bit. The reason why we always like for likes and subscribes and things like this, it's very pleasant to us, but the most important part is obviously the way the YouTube algorithm works is if you press likes, it starts to share it to a lot more people. So more people can find and watch us as well. So that's what it is. It just needs to be there. Obviously, it doesn't cost you anything. It's a press of a button, but it helps the channel enormously.
It does. It, as I say, keeps it nice and healthy and shows it to people. It's always fun when when people find us through random things. Actually, because we've been reviewing the Voigtlander lenses, and those haven't really been reviewed for the Nikon F mount out there, I don't think. We've had some people just newly discover the channel, which is great. So if you can always recommend it if you've got any Nikon friends out there. If you want to, it doesn't have to be an exclusive group just for us. We can bring some more people into the fold.
Well, the funny thing is if you ever seen the Samuel Street Life YouTube channel, it's a great channel. He talks about street photography, lots of rangefinder talk, etc., and he found us just by researching for Voigtlander lenses, and surprisingly, he said, "Oh, guys, it's a cool channel. Nice to meet you." That was really nice. Yeah.
Yay. Makes us happy. It makes us happy when people find our channel and like it. Angel said, is there a modern equivalent of the 2485 AF-D micro? I love the output of this lens on my D800. Now, this is a really interesting lens because they didn't do it. That was a 2.8 to 4 lens, that 24-85, and it had the macro switch on it. I used it actually on my D300 for a while. The more modern one was actually a 24-85 G version, which they brought out with the D200 because the original one had the aperture ring. It's a distance information lens, so older style. Then they brought out a VR version. The VR version is a perfectly capable lens. They don't any longer include the macro feature though, because the lenses just naturally focus so closely, and when you were activating that macro switch, all it was doing was forcing the lens to go slightly closer. You wouldn't get like one-to-one reproduction or anything if you did that, but it sort of limited the focal lengths of the lens in order to allow you to focus closer. And now that capability is incorporated into lenses. It's not the same thing, obviously, but it is to a certain degree incorporated into more modern lenses. And you'll notice with most of the newer F-mount lenses and also the Z-mount lenses that the closest focusing distance is very, very close on many of those. I think because people do tend to use that. So Nikon have included it now without having to remember to flick a little switch. That's my assumption anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
Good. Thanks.
That's my addition to that.
Yeah, very cool. David from Synthetic Color said Voigtlander F-mount reviews are rare. So we have put out our 28mm one. We've got our 58mm one. What have we got next?
40 is next
40.
one. That's this Sunday. Yeah.
That's
and
this
then
weekend.
we've already reviewed 58 and 90. So they will come out at some point.
Yes, exactly. And we have also just seen that the new Z, I'm sorry to keep bringing up Z, but on a DSLR chat, but the new Z30 5mm macro DX lens that Voigtlander brought out has actually just arrived. So if you are a mirrorless user of APS-C cameras, Z30, Z50, ZFC, then that one is now available. And at some point we will review it when we have a review sample.
So you haven't opened one up yet, have you?
No, I haven't, because we only got a couple and we put them into stock. But yes, we will definitely do a review at some point in the not too distant future. So yes, watch this space for that one. We do put out a video pretty much every weekend, don't we, on different things. So just telling you what we like, what we don't. Usually what we like. Champagne Suma said, I'm having to pare down my camera collection. Picking which equipment to sell is difficult. I completely understand. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's much easier to buy equipment than it is to sell it, I find.
Because they were so special.
Yeah. And you kind of, there isn't a single film camera I've bought that I've sold. I think that except for to upgrade, like I sold my FM2N to buy my FM3A, but I haven't, of my vast collection of film cameras, I've never sold one yet.
True. I mean, my F-mount DSLR equipment kind of, went
yes,
for sale.
DSLRs is a little bit different. I miss the D850, but you were shooting with the D850 the other week and
I've lost touch.
Do you feel very out of touch with the
very
whole
rusty with it? True, because you just get used to electronic viewfinder, and then you especially with the manual focus lenses, and you just don't realize how convenient it is to have digital zoom when you're focusing manually, because you can zoom in to 100% digitally and make sure that everything's pin sharp. So if you shoot in a full height, let's say portrait with a 90mm, you are really far away from the subject.
Yes.
In a poorly lit space, it's quite difficult to use optical viewfinder to confirm the focus. So yeah, but little things like this, definitely, I think just because we've been using mirrorless system for 2 years now, I couldn't get back to D850, it just felt a little bit awkward. And it's, for me, is still the best camera from Nikon at the moment, personally.
Yes. But it's 4 years since the Z6 and Z7 came out, believe it or not.
It took me 2 years to get a Z6. Wasn't convinced.
I know.
Couple of firmware updates.
You were such a naysayer from the very
start. I still am. I mean, they're great cameras, but yeah, we need more cameras to bring us up to speed. It's just because, you're looking at D850, you're looking at D6. Okay, D6 is just inexpensive. So D850 is just the ultimate camera in terms of performance. You got frame rate, you got the resolution, which is still a really good resolution, 45 megapixels. You got state-of-the-art autofocus system. It was pretty much camera for everyone, including sports and wildlife photographer. Yeah. So while we do get smaller cameras now, which is nice because, when you have to carry a lot of things, the head weighs up, weighs up and all this, but I just still, like, the reason why I say Z8 or whatever, Z6 III, Z7 III, we just need to have that autofocus performance. And it doesn't mean that autofocus performance on the current cameras is bad. It is not. I'm just comparing to D850. I don't compare it with the competitors, if you see what I mean. Yes,
precisely. Albert asks if we are going to review any Zeiss lenses in the future. If you know anyone in Zeiss, Albert, feel free to send them our way. Sometimes it is honestly a difficulty with getting hold of things as opposed to our willingness. We're always willing to review stuff or to put it through its paces, but we can't always get a hold of it. So yes, that would be the next step on that one. And as we're a two-person production team that also does lots of other things. We don't necessarily have time to go out and find those contacts and be very nice and wine and dine them so that they'll send us free stuff. Paul asked if we have any thoughts on purchasing a D800 in 2022. I mean, I think that is a camera that's probably more understood now than it was when it first came out, in terms of its capabilities, in terms of its limits, in terms of how to use it. It really was, at the time, I think best purpose would be studio and landscape with, you know, everything, if either fast shutter speeds or on a tripod with mirror up, etc., because there was a huge amount of, I would not say issues, but there were a large number of people who didn't necessarily understand that with that sudden leap of 24 to 36 megapixels, you were going to end up seeing all the flaws in your lenses and your photography if you didn't know how to use the camera.
I mean, a lot of people were upgrading from D700, and I had a guy who said, oh, you know, everything looks sharp on my D700 and I get motion blur. And I was like, what are you shooting? Well, I'm shooting portraiture. Let's check your exposure settings. So shutter speed 30s of a second. Yes, it looks reasonably sharp on D700. It's still there, but obviously it's a lot more obvious on 36 megapixel resolution of D800. And in terms of this, yes, it was a slow camera. It was unforgiving camera to use, but at the same time, the image quality it produced at the time was probably one of the best ones without going to medium format. So, you know, I think it had a lot to it, but it definitely required people to adapt in terms of using it. So, you know, or let's say learn how to shoot with this camera, similar like you would, I always say, if you use it how you would use your film camera. So, you know, try to shoot at 1/25th minimum, you know, don't go below there. So maybe 250 is even better. Think about diffraction, etc., etc. Exactly.
Yeah, and think about also the lenses that you're using and whether or not they are up to resolving the detail of a 36 megapixel sensor, because that was the other thing. But it's a beautiful camera. The main upgrade that they gave it to the D810 was the buffered sort of mirror box and shutter mechanism, so that you could shoot handheld at slightly slower shutter speeds. Obviously they removed the AA filter altogether rather than having a D800 and a D800E. There were a bunch of other bits and pieces that were quite helpful towards videographers as well. The live view improved, but the D800 is still, I think, still a very, very valid camera. Josan said, I got myself a D800 this year, sold my Sony A7 for it. No regrets whatsoever. We love it. And John said, I love my D800E, just so good. It was and is a very good camera, and you can just pick them up so much cheaper now.
And that was my choice personally. I bought the E instead of the standard one. Yeah,
that's right. And as Baxter said, the D800 punishes poor technique. Once you've put in the effort to understand it, produces fantastic results still, which is very, very true. Now,
well, that's the problem we have with people now. People just expect camera to do everything. So people don't talk about, people don't talk about poor technique anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what, you know, we just expect the camera to deliver results. And, you know, that's not the right way to approach the camera. You still need to learn how to use it. And that's why we always say, you know, okay, it's nice to buy latest and greatest, but maybe buy something cheaper, learn how to use it, and then upgrade, because then you appreciate it a lot more.
Yes, or maybe spend some time really getting to know it before you throw yourself in the deep end at a very highly paid job and then don't know how to use your camera. Because
absolutely,
I mean, we've seen it all, right? You and I, we've seen the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. And I will say that the best pictures usually come from people that know how to use their equipment. More often than not, if you don't know how to use it, you're not going to get the results you're happy with. Now, interestingly enough, Ian said, I'm shooting with the D7500 mostly for wildlife. You've got that lovely crop factor in there. And I'm looking for an announcement of a mirrorless with bird eye detect without having to sell my car to get a Z9. I think that's very valid. We have talked about the sort of D500 being replaced in a Z form a few times. And I think that that's still very much a wanted thing by the community. AB says, I own a D850 and a Z6 II, want to replace my 200 to 500 for an 80 to 400 or Z100 to 400. What would you suggest? Ooh, now we've done our tests.
Hmm.
The 100-400 is a better lens optically.
Yeah,
It is
for sure.
sharper by a considerable amount than the 80-400. However, that does mean that you then don't have a lens for your D850, which is a bit of a shame. But if you want something super duper sharp, then the 100-400 would be my suggestion. What's your thoughts and feelings? It's not a conventional comparison, but Con, what's your thoughts and feelings between the 80-400 and the 200-500? Because one is big and heavy, one has a much
Hmm.
longer range. What would you say? Which one stays, which one goes?
I would say really if you're shooting mostly on the longer end, then 200 to 500,
Yeah.
because it's definitely better. So, and especially if you 200 to 500 at 400 will be sharper than 80 to 400 at 400. So, it's also, in my opinion, it's a little bit faster as well, what's focus wise. So yeah, I would say if you're shooting a longer end, definitely 200 to 500, and then get 70 to 100 if you need 2.8, let's say, to complete that space. But if you want to have all in one, then 80 to 400 is reasonably small and light, but performance wise, it's not going to be the same.
Yes. Good. We've got some really interesting and good questions coming in. David earlier asked what the difference is between standard lenses or standard products and grey imported products. The difference is the way that you get it. No, there is no manufacturing difference necessarily, but it doesn't come through proper channels, which just means that Nikon, your local Nikon service center, won't touch it. You may end up being hit with certain import duties, and obviously if something goes wrong, you don't have that recourse to your local dealer. So obviously we don't encourage grey import because that would be bad. We like it when people buy things within the region that they're supposed to buy them, or from an official dealer. So for example, if you're in some other part of the world in the UK and you purchase from us, you still have recourse with us. If something goes wrong, we will get you under warranty. We'll still get your equipment repaired, and your local Nikon service center will look after it, and we will foot the bill as needed. Whereas with grey importers, I mean, I've seen everything from people selling stuff on eBay as brand new, but grey imported with the 3-year warranty. But then it's like, how does that individual or company, how are they still accountable if 2.5 years down the line something goes wrong?
Yeah.
You don't really have a way of necessarily making them keep that promise. So there's that, and there's also, we've had import duties on people buying stuff grey imports and various other things. So you'll probably have also potentially different contents in the box, overseas cables, for example. If you're buying a camera, you'll get different bits and pieces. Yeah. Stuff like that.
But I think warranty is the most important thing, because it's all good and great until something goes wrong with your camera.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's anyone's guess. If you're going to have a good service, do you need to ship it, let's say, back to Hong Kong, and then for it to come back, you might need to pay the postage, etc., etc. So there's a lot of things, and we've heard some horror stories, and obviously it doesn't happen a lot, but if it happens to you, then it won't matter if everyone had a great experience. So.
That's right, and we like you all to be well behaved and buy them from your local dealer. Support the camera shops. So the Great Loco said, should I upgrade to a D850 from a D800? Con, I think that's a question for you.
Definitely.
Yeah,
D850 is a huge improvement everywhere. And in terms of this, autofocus performance, handheld shooting, definitely less for internal vibrations. Overall, camera is more responsive. It's just because of the new process, etc. So sometimes with D800, you take a shot and you may need to wait before it, or let's say especially if you're shooting on continuous frame rate, etc., etc. So overall, I would say D850 is much bigger jump from D800 than D810 to D800. So definitely 2 generations. And D850, as I say, it's still probably the best DSLR ever made.
For sure. I stand by that. Michael asked, would a D810 complement my D500 for landscape? Most certainly. I mean, it's obviously, it's got more resolution than a D800. So if you're looking for something that has that kind of, you've got the D500 resolution. If you want the full frame equivalent, it's about right, isn't it? The D850, D810. In terms of, 36 megapixels. No, it isn't actually. 45 is closer to 20 megapixels on DX sensor, isn't it?
Oh gosh,
I'm working it out that way around.
Yeah, I'm
But
trying
yeah.
to remember when you go to the crop mode on D850, do you get 20 megapixels or 24? I thought it was always 24, but I can be wrong on this.
I think it's 20, and I think because the D810 is 36 megapixels, the crop gives you 12.
Was it 12 or 15?
12, or it might be 14. Don't
That
know how
was
to
a long
do the
time
maths
ago.
on that. Was a long
That's
time
true.
ago. But you could certainly, Michael, use the D810 for landscapes if you want something as a kind of, because the other thing that you get is this greater, I call it latitude now, but that's not, dynamic range is what we call it in digital.
That's the word, yes.
Converting film speak to digital speak. So you get far greater dynamic range with full frame cameras if that's what you're after for your landscapes. David says no one loves the D780. I actually had an email just this morning saying how much someone loved their D780. We love the D780. We never see them secondhand because people just keep hold of them. It was one of those cameras that just kind of snuck in there and hasn't been spoken about enough, but it was a great upgrade for the D750.
I think that was the only hybrid DSLR that Nikon ever made. So if you do need to use live view a lot on your DSLR, that would be the best camera to choose.
Yes, it is. It is lovely. Ahim says D850 is slightly below 20 megapixels in crop. So there you go. Yeah, it's like we kind of round it about. It's about 20. It's not quite down to the last millionth of a pixel, but yeah. Matt, hello, Matt, you're here. Matt Owen is in the chat with us.
Hi, Matt.
There's D850 DX is something around 19.7 or something. Yeah,
20.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going to call it 20. D810, if I remember, was somewhere between about 12 and 14 megapixels. Thomas says the D810 is 12 megapixels in DX crop mode. So there you go. It's lovely to have you here with us, Matt. Thank you for joining this afternoon. Yeah, we're chatting full on DSLRs. We're trying not to mention Zeds today. It's proven quite challenging. Now, gosh, I'm just having a look here. So Stephen says, bought my D780 used and shot great pics in Colorado. It is a lovely sensor, that camera. And I love the fact that it's got that hybrid AF system. It like turns into a Z camera in live view mode, but is a DSLR in optical viewfinder mode. Now, why is this helpful? Optical viewfinders are great when you're shooting events, when you're shooting in the studio. If you don't like looking at an electronic viewfinder, which a few people mentioned they really didn't like earlier, but it's just that it's so much easier to shoot with an optical viewfinder when you're doing stuff where with an electronic viewfinder, it would be too dark or too bright, or it would, or you get the flicker issue, which you can't see in an optical viewfinder, but you can see it on a digital screen. I think there's many nice reasons for using an optical viewfinder.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, it's one of those things where when you come in from optical viewfinder to electronic viewfinder, and a lot of people went through that where they had difficulties adapting to electronic viewfinder. So, and obviously, yeah, like if you're looking at film cameras, obviously split screen image focusing screen is fantastic for focusing manually. Obviously, all the DSLRs and autofocus film cameras would have a plain screen, so the focusing manually wouldn't be as good. But then, yeah, low light focusing, I do find that, say, D850 still focuses better in low light compared to, let's say, current mirrorless operating. This maybe except Z9. So, and it's just the difference. It's to do with autofocus system more than anything else, I would say.
Yeah, that's very true. Matt says that the D810 could be his all-time favorite DSLR. So there you go, Michael, who was asking about the D810. You've heard it from the great man himself. Thank you to Terry for your contribution.
Thank you, Terry.
Very, very much appreciated. And the great Loco says the D800 shoots 50 megapixels on DX. So we've had a few schools of thought on that one, but it's somewhere between 12 and 15 we've established. I don't think anyone can do the maths. And he also says the colors on EVF are sometimes off. Now, I was chatting to someone the other day who had been having some difficulties shooting in a studio environment with a Z camera, because yes, you can take off the apply settings to the live view thing, but they were struggling overall with the kind of look and exposure with an electronic viewfinder, and said, God, I really wish I still had my optical viewfinder. As Roy said, flash is still a problem on mirrorless cameras. It's not perfect, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I would advise to use, if you use strobes, I would advise to use at least a bit of modeling light just to help with focusing. But if it's pitch black, then there's not much you can do. You just need to apply it to the live view setting.
Yeah,
turn it off.
Yeah, that's right. Turn off that option in your custom settings menu. Phil says the biggest advantage with EVF for me is ability to shoot entirely without my reading glasses, since menus and all can be seen in diopter adjusted viewfinder. It's a really good point. If you're one of those people that needs to take your glasses on and off when you're looking through the viewfinder, it's really helpful actually to have all that. And Dave says before, I was highly skeptical about EVFs, but now wouldn't be without one. So I think we've kind of felt the same way recently. When switching over and going, hold on. The other day someone gave me, I think it was a D4, and I was trying to use the touch screen. It's not a touch screen on the back of that camera.
It doesn't work.
And I don't even use it that much on my own camera, but I just wanted to very quickly change something and then realized it's not touch screen.
I know, we get used to technology so quickly, it's ridiculous. And then coming back to something older, you just feel like, how did I use it before that? It's so uncomfortable to use anymore. It's a strange thing. We, as human beings, I think, just tend to adapt to new things really quickly.
That's right. Someone is answering a comment from that I can't find the original comment of, but anyway, Nigel was saying, I'm sure importers have a list of official imported serial numbers. So when it comes to buying secondhand, you cannot tell if something is grey import necessarily. Cameras tend to have batches of serial numbers that, like, for example, in the UK and Europe, our serial numbers for cameras now all start with 6. So we know that they're someone at the door. So we know, for example, when a camera was bought outside of the UK or outside of Europe because of the 6 number. But I think in the US, I think the cameras start with the number 3. And there are, is it pizza? Is it pizza?
No, it's Tilly. She's in the house.
Yes. Tilly's in the house. I was going to say there was no barking when the doorbell rang. So where's Tilly? There we go. There she is.
Yeah, she had her daycare, so she's happy to see me now.
She's back from doggy daycare. Exactly. Brilliant. Anyway, I was just talking about serial numbers. But yeah, when it comes to secondhand, usually the person you buy it from or the company that you buy it from are providing their own warranty. That's certainly the case with greys. So, for example, here, we do sometimes get customers who bought their lens in the US or something like that. And you'll know because the serial number used to say US and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. It doesn't matter because we're providing the warranty. That's the same with any other dealer that's worth their salt will also offer a warranty on that item. So in that sense, grey import doesn't really matter. It's just for new equipment.
So I think what you're trying to say, Bex, is basically it's more important who you buy it from, that where it comes from, because if your dealer can look after you, then that's all you need to worry about. It doesn't matter if the camera came, let's say, from Hong Kong, etc., etc. Now, obviously, authorized dealers like us, we would only buy stock that was basically imported by Nikon to Europe, and that would come to UK from there. So, but at the same time, like we had some people buying cameras from us, and they say they're in another part of the world, and say my camera's broken. What do? Do I ship it to you? And obviously, that involves not just postage costs, but customs and things like this. And in the back as well, it's all customs and duties involved. So what we normally do as a dealer, we would say, get in touch with your local Nikon authorized service, let them check it, send us an estimate, make sure it's all covered under warranty. And then we'll just, as you say, we feed the bill, and that basically things done locally to a customer, camera doesn't need to travel, etc., etc. So again, if you're dealing with a proper deal, they'll do that for you. But if it's someone shady selling on the internet, you don't know where the camera come from, as I say, it's all good until something happens to your camera, and then it's just a lottery.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, if it's not a warranty repair, if it's your camera and you've done something, you've dropped it or you've broken it or whatever, then that's also a little bit different because you would be footing the bill anyway. So you can really send it to any service center that will take it. It's specifically when it comes down to warranty. And obviously we know the more electronics that go into equipment, the more likely people are going to use their warranty. Mechanical parts, as witnessed by Nikon Fs, F2s, early cameras like that, things don't really go wrong with them for many, many years. It's amazing that you can still use those cameras that are 50, 60 plus years old and you don't have an issue with them. So it's also the electronics factor as well, and firmware and stuff like that. So yeah, it's, as you say, I approve this message. It depends on where you buy it from.
That's true. I mean, now we talk about mirrorless cameras and they're even less moving parts. You
Mm.
look at the DSLR design, there's, mirror has to go up and down, et cetera, et cetera. So there's even less moving parts and it's all electronics. So it's not like your local DIY guy who can fix FM2, let's say, they won't be able to fix that. So that has to go through the proper service channels. But also there's a rumor is going on the internet right now. I'll just share it with you folks. So apparently Leica now decided not to supply parts to independent repairs, with centers. Because obviously Leica cameras, they're mainly manual, and we're talking about film cameras here. So they've decided to stop that. And now, they haven't announced it, but it seems like a lot of independent repair companies saying we no longer can repair them because we can't get the parts. And it seems like now all the cameras have to go to Leica and they'll charge a lot more than, let's say, independent repairmen will charge you. So it's an interesting one. I don't agree with that particular thing, but as you say, when we're talking about electronic cameras, like digital cameras, that's a different story. Then, of course, you'd rather, want to send it to someone authorized because they know what they're doing.
Yeah, you wouldn't want some dodgy parts being put in your camera, that's for sure. Some fake
A chip
knockoff
from a
sensor.
toaster or something, yeah.
That's right. Now, Harvinder asked if there was a big market for older used Z bodies like the Z6 and Z7. There seems to be a lot of those for sale. We're talking about DSLRs today, but to answer your question, we actually have a huge demand for those. The Z6 and Z7 with the latest firmware has honestly, I think, really updated that camera to where I still use my Z6. I love my camera and I use it all the time and I don't really have any complaints about it. It's only in situations where, for example, we were out on a shoot and he'd have the Z9 that we'd loaned from Nikon briefly, and I'd be using the Z6, and then I would see, okay, yes, there is definitely a difference in autofocus speed and things like that, but I still love the pictures that come out of that camera. So I don't have any complaints about it. And whenever we get them in stock, they fly off the shelves. So that's at least for us.
True.
So,
I mean, all our videos are shot on Z6 as well for our YouTube channel. So yeah, we both shoot Z6s pretty much. And, I think, how the new trend on YouTube say, is this camera still good in 2022? So I think the Z6 is still good in 2022 and also 2023.
Maybe we'll do that in 2023. 5 years later, is the Z6 still good?
To get more clicks.
That's right. A few people have mentioned the 100 to 400 and asking about like that over the 200 to 500. I think the general consensus in the comments, which was I didn't address but was going to answer anyway, was that yes, the 100 to 400 with the teleconverter is very, very good. And I think we may still have one in stock. So whoever it was that was looking for one, can't find the comment. J-Rod, if you want one from Grays, I think we might have one, unless you're overseas, in which case buy one from your local dealer. Rob says, I still have my D3S and D300. They have never missed a beat. I'm very glad to hear it. I love it when we get people who have still got, for example, D3s or D3Ss, and they're still using them and they're very, very happy with them. Whether it's, for light casual use or whether it's professionally, they're very, very capable cameras, I would say.
I agree. I think, like you look at DSLRs and you just feel like they're properly made. When you look at the cameras, like, yeah, that just feels nice. And obviously D200 series, 700 and 800 series, for me, those are the best just because the grip is so nice. They feel fully professional. And then obviously, if you start to look at the D2 up to D6 line, obviously those are, I would say, in terms of build quality, probably the best cameras in the world.
Yeah, they are. They're phenomenal what they can withstand. Thank you very much to David from Synthetic Color for a pumpkin
David.
spice latte with a splash of coffee. That sounds
Definitely need one.
Dirty pumpkin spice latte. I don't think they actually put any coffee in pumpkin spice lattes, but I'm all here for it. Why not? Throw it in. It's definitely one of those slightly overcast, in need of caffeine afternoons. AP Studios said, Chuck said, all
Hi,
of
Chuck.
hello. All my DSLRs have been sold except my D500. It's going soon. That, I'm sorry to hear that it's going soon. Don't know if you've got anything else to replace it, but I'm glad that the D500 has been at the main time serving you very, very well. Harvinder asked, what's the most sought after F-mount lens at Grays? That's a really tough question. It's actually, I mean, today, for example, we've had a couple of 500 PFs go. And that's just today. In recent weeks, it's been things like anything from the 28 1.4, which is still a classic.
Ooh, yeah, that's amazing.
Nikon F.
105, 1.4 as well. Oof,
yeah,
amazing.
Lovely, lovely lenses. Secondhand is a real mixed bag. When we get to the end of the year, we'll do like our top sellers, and we do this every year. We do a sort of end of year review, and we'll do a Grays Westminster one in the form of a live stream. And we'll kind of work out what our best sellers for the year were in new and secondhand. I think last year it was surprisingly like the best selling secondhand camera was actually the Z6, if I remember correctly. I have to go and watch our old episode. I think that's what it was.
Get us some views, Becky, please. Yeah.
Go and have a watch them. Ed says my D200 is my main camera these days. Renee said my D200 needs to see Nikon service, but fortunately my main camera is a D810. J-Rod, Nikon USA is in stock of the 100-400. That is tough, means you might need to get one. And Juve says, I still have my D1, D2X, D3S, D4, and DF. The DF is beautiful. Rob said Matt's 58mm 1.01 F1 that sold for 182,000. I didn't know that story.
Yeah, that was on the news. It's in the Nikon report, the one that we didn't record it. So
I missed that. See, when I don't do the Nikon report, I don't know what's going on.
Well, we probably will talk about it next week.
Yes, we will. And Dave said, tested my D200 last time I used it, thought there was a battery drain issue, really ought to take it out, but always reach for the Z. I think it's nice sometimes. Also, it's nice to get these old DSLRs converted to infrared. A few people were talking about this earlier, but I think it's if you want to give your DSLR a new lease of life and you're not really sure what to do with it, and you're happy to throw a few pounds at it, then some few cents, then converting it to infrared is a really nice way to give it that fresh lease of life, because it's really cool. You know what I mean? It's just cool.
We should do a video on that. Okay. I've never done it, so for me it's going to be completely new topic to counter, I would say. Yeah.
What, the infrared?
Yeah, DSLR? Photography. Never done it.
Oh, you're missing out. I need to get you to come out with me.
Maybe what we should do is we should actually get the camera, convert it ourselves, because that's going to be fun. So lots of beeps, I'm sure, in the middle of that. So, and then we're going to shoot with it, and hopefully it works.
Don't think it will if we convert it ourselves. Eric asked if we have healthy D850 sales, if their sales are still healthy in today's camera world. Yeah, it is. I mean, there's only 3 cameras now, really. You've got the D850, D8, D780, and I believe the D7500. Those are the last 3 DSLRs that we have. So the D850 is the only pro. Oh, and the D6, of course. Sorry, forgot that one. Those are the only kind of DSLR offerings. The D850 of all of those is the most popular for sure. D780 comes in close second, I would say. We have been blathering on for an hour, believe it or not.
As we always do.
Yes, I know. But I think we should do some infrared stuff. Maybe we'll figure that out just for our lovely YouTube viewers. There's a couple of places in the UK that do infrared conversions. We've got a D90 converted to infrared, which I've used and is actually quite a lovely sensor to shoot. It's a 12 megapixel DX sensor. It's a nice sensor.
Is it enough for Instagram nowadays, Becky?
Yeah, for
Just
infrared
kidding,
it
yeah.
is. Yeah, for sure.
Good.
And I've also got an infrared filter, so maybe it's a 77 mil, so I'd have to find a lens, a filter, a lens that will take that filter thread. But anyway, we could do that. Watch this space.
Sounds good.
folks.
Definitely.
Okay, we're going to love you and leave you. Thank you so much, everyone, for your contributions to the coffee fund, and
Thank you so much.
to for your contributions on the chat, and for telling us about your DSLR adventures, and for all your questions. And we will see you next week, hopefully with some more videos.
Definitely. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.